Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is Article of Faith number 28, and it's on Christian perfection, or as some you may have heard, entire sanctification. And this is probably one of the least, or most neglected of our distinctively Methodist, I think it's distinctively Methodist doctrines. John Wesley wrote about this pretty extensively, and that's where I heard about it, because I've never heard about it from church, and even the Wesleyan denomination, which actually tracks this in their statistics, their annual statistics. I've never heard it taught, except for at a Sunday school class that I taught, and I taught on this. So that's the only place I've ever heard it taught, and it's not an easily understood doctrine. So, but I think it's very important for all believers to at least consider it. So this comes out of the EUB tradition. You see, it's a confession of faith. And it says, entire sanctification is a state of perfect love, righteousness, and true holiness, which every regenerate believer may obtain by being delivered from the power of sin, by loving God with all the heart, soul, mind, and strength, and by loving one's neighbor as oneself. So, entire sanctification, they say it's perfect love, righteousness, and true holiness. Well, what is that? And they break it down to say, well, basically, it's being able to follow the two great commandments: loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. That's what it is. It means being able to actually fulfill those, that you be able to stand before the Lord and say, I'm doing these with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving my neighbor actually as I love myself. So that's what that is. And also it's being delivered from the power of sin. And you see this, I don't know if I've seen it in the Gospels, but I know I've seen it in Revelation, where Jesus writes to the churches and says, to the one who overcomes, and it's mainly talking about overcoming sin, the world, the flesh, and the devil is what John Wesley says in his notes. But I think the main difficulty in this doctrine is this. It says every believer may obtain. And that, I think, is where a lot of times if we go wrong on this doctrine, it's in that how do we actually obtain it? And so this doctrine goes on, and it says, through faith in Jesus Christ, this gracious gift may be received in this life both gradually and instantaneously, and should be sought earnestly by every child of God. We believe this experience does not deliver us from the infirmities, ignorance, and mistakes common to man, nor from the possibilities of further sin. So here they talk about how it's obtained. It is through faith in Jesus Christ, and it's a gift. I mean, this is not anything that you can earn. It's not something that you can, if you just prayed harder, if you were a little more sincere in your faith or anything like that. It's through faith. But it's also, I want to say there's a caveat here, is that you should also earnestly seek after it. So there's gifts that God's willing to give you, but I don't think if you're not looking for it or willing to receive it, how can you accept it? So I think there's the faith in Jesus Christ, and then there's actually seeking after this gift. So, and I do like that they say both instantaneously and gradually. Some people teach that this is an instantaneously thing. I think for most people they will experience it more gradually, in that they'll make progress towards being Christian perfect. They'll see their ability to love God more fully, and their ability to love their neighbor, and the power growing, and the power of sin declining over time. Some people do experience it instantaneously, and I don't think that should be discounted. I've known people that have experienced it instantaneously. And John Wesley makes the same distinction as well, is that this Christian perfection is not human perfection. This is not a guarantee that you won't get sick. This is not a guarantee that you're going to know everything that needs to be known. I mean, even God's will. And it's not a guarantee that you're not going to make mistakes anymore. You're still going to accidentally hurt people. You're still going to not do all the good you should do, that you're called to do, and you're still going to sometimes neglect the ordinances of God. So it's just saying, guess what? You're still a human, but your heart has been fixed. It is aligned perfectly, and sin doesn't have the hold on you anymore. But it's also not an inoculation against sin, because it says here there's a possibility for future sin. And the next section really dives into this more. It says that the Christian must continue on guard against spiritual pride and seek to gain victory over every temptation to sin. He must respond wholly to the will of God so that sin will lose its power over him, and the world, the flesh, and the devil are put under his feet. Thus, he rules over these enemies with watchfulness through the power of the Holy Spirit. So, this is probably the most common sin that those that have received entire sanctification or Christian perfection are prone to, and it's spiritual pride. And I've seen it in some individuals where they'll basically say in a shaming way, I don't see why anybody'd want to sin, versus somebody else. And I've heard it said, a different way is, you don't have to sin. There is a way forward. I mean, it's a difference between somebody wanting to shame you versus somebody that wants the best for you. But spiritual pride is definitely for not only those that have received Christian perfection, but I think for anybody that has been a Christian for a while and has been maturing in their faith, and gradually moving towards Christian perfection, that is a real temptation or something to be guarded against, is spiritual pride. And you'll still be tempted, is also what it says. There's not going to be, you still need to watch out for temptation. And I do like that this is one of the things that convicted me while I was reading it, is that there's this whole section here, and especially that watchfulness. It's easy to get lax and to kind of let the things of the world, the flesh, and the devil, I don't know if I don't want to say them have dominance over us, but kind of toy with them. My own life, watch YouTube videos that are maybe, political or just stuff that's probably not healthy for my spirit to watch, or other things. I mean, there's a ton of things that watchfulness and mindfulness that the enemy really wants to prevent this, but the Holy Spirit is there to help us move forward. So even if we're experiencing gradual Christian perfection, I think that watchfulness, I think it's hard to make progress if you're not watchful. So and I shouldn't have said it that way. It's not make progress. That sounds like it's under our own self, but it's hard to receive the gift if we're also wanting to receive stuff from the world, the flesh, and the devil at the same time. So anyway, that's my thoughts for this week. The last one is on civil government. So kind of another one of those oddball ones, but actually an important doctrine. So I'll see you next week.